costs and then does the energy and atmosphere credit 1 lead calculation, which, if I may, you guys maybe can appreciate, that's 3 separate days of 7-hour professional development hour training that we tour the country with. Our schedule for training is on the internet, and typically we'll come to Chicago and other major cities across the country. And I'll show you where all that stuff is on the internet, but we have to consolidate to about 1 o'clock today, Chicago time, all that we're able to do. So my first thought is, anytime you have a question, just chirp in and interrupt me, because I'll get going, because I have a lot of material to cover, and we'll answer your question live. If you like today's session when it's over, we can do another one, more specific maybe to what is your area of interest. So with that in mind, I'll just give you some look-see at the HAP program, its functionality, its productivity enhancements, and then talk about loads, operating cost, and lead. Try to wrap that up live all by about 1 o'clock-ish. So first thing I'd like to do by starting out, they're in current version 4.8. It's about a month old. If you don't have 4.8 and you're a HAP user, you should have 4.8. All you got to do is email us. We have one email address for everything. It's really simple. I'll show you where it is. It's embedded in the HAP program. And tell us, hey, why don't I have HAP 4.8? And if you should, we'll find out why you don't, and we'll send it to you in a split second over the email. You can download it and install it. 4.8 is, and you should always, in my opinion, always be using the latest version of HAP. It's not like you're going to get a more correct answer with it, but we went to later versions of the product, of the software, for good reason, not to just impress you that we're keeping it updated. We added new things, and often on support, I'm one of the 4 support people, often people will be asking a question that was not even going to be a question had they been running the latest version of HAP. Often I say, well, no, we fixed that a year ago. Or else, we do model that, sir. It's right in HAP. It's been there for a year, starting with version 4.7. So we want to be in 4.8 for a lot of good reasons. HAP does a full 8760 analysis for operating cost. It's one of the 4 or 5 programs, quite honestly, that most people in the consulting business are having to use. If you're not using HAP, you're probably using Trace. If you're not using Trace or HAP, you're probably using eQuest or Energy Plus. Maybe there might be a 5th one there that I'd be running loads with, like some people had to leap, but then again, I don't think that goes into doing operating costs, leads, energy and atmosphere certification type calculations. So, you know, HAP is one of the programs that's out there. I'm not going to sit here and say it's got everything in it that all the other programs do. Not a one of them is perfect for everyone. They all lack something that may be important to you. That's why you may find running HAP the majority of the time for everyday jobs really satisfies you, which isn't yet in HAP. It will be in the next version, I'm told, version 4.9. You might have to go and use Tracer or eQuest or something that has daylighting. So it's really used for heating and cooling and operating cost and lead analysis. It's recognized, certified, whatever the right term is, by all the important government, U.S. Green Building Council, Green Building Certification Institute, all the things that people need these days. EPAC, if you're doing EPAC, tax deduction calculations, you have to use certain software. The only place I'd say that it isn't used is where Title 24 California is required. It's so special, I think I'm right in saying you have to use their software. You can't use HAP, you can't use Trace and others. It's got to be select for that particular location. At which point it's so different, we figured we would not spend development time, even though California is a big state. I think I'm right in saying other software took the same approach. We want to apply to the global masses of users that have licensed HAP and keep the majority happy. And there's always something that you don't do for someone, I found. So it's a design tool. You take the results out of HAP, and you can go select any brand of equipment, any of the major brands, the minor brands. This gives you input and X output data from cooling coils, sizes of chillers. It'll run operating cost and pick the lowest operating cost system and show you what it is. It'll model just about anything that's out there equipment-wise, and then you, as a designer, can go and specify what you would like to with the results of HAP. So it doesn't select Carrier equipment or Trane or York or anyone. It just tells you the input parameters and the output requirements to do the load, to do the operating costs, to comply with lead, etc., that you've asked it to do. And then you can go into what are called builders or selection programs. Carrier calls them electronic catalog programs, and make actual equipment selections with the help of your local sales professional who can bridge the gap, this is important, between a design program like HAP and something commercially available in the real world. So people might call up support and say, hey, I can't select a Carrier rooftop with Carrier HAP. I was like, well, it's giving you an answer, and if that answer is outside the range of pre-engineered packaged product, that's where a local salesperson can show you what's available to accomplish your requirements. HAP is just telling you answer. It's not going to go select equipment for you. Okay? So it's based upon an ASHRAE, what's called transfer function engine. It's not a Carrier calculation. Transfer function methodology you can read about extensively in ASHRAE, or we can send you Carrier information about it and how it works. The long and short of it is it's a sophisticated method of doing cooling loads that's been around for quite a while. It takes into account the thermal storage and mass of the building structure and the re-release of energy, conduction, convection, radiation over time. So when HAP runs a load, a cooling load, it gives you the month and hour of a frame construction building, maybe at 1 in the afternoon, and then you change that whole building quickly to heavy construction, like a downtown federal courthouse building, and run the same exact lights and walls and people and roof and glass, etc., and it makes it peak later in the afternoon. It's because the heavier weight construction retains heat longer and re-releases it different than lightweight construction. So what you want to give HAP to do accurate cooling loads and other programs at this level is not wall U values. We need the actual years of the assembly of the wall, the roof, the glass. And then we calculate what's called a transfer function coefficient, and that mass of the building is then defined, then the thermal characteristics of the building are known, let's say, for doing cooling loads. Okay, it runs an 8760 op cost. There's no HAP Lite. There's no 1400-hour version. There's no bed method version. It does a full 8760. It's what most engineers would like to see these days. So it will calculate an operating cost using hourly weather data called TMY, typical meteorological year. And this weather data is measured at your local airport by NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and then we license it from them, embed it in HAP, and it's a completely different weather data set that you use for running loads. Loads is simple. It's just straight ASHRAE, clear sky design, what's called design weather data. Big portion of HAP also is it's set up with some time-saving productivity enhancements to allow you to do the energy and atmosphere credit 1 analysis in a reasonable time frame. So we think we've taken a good bit of the grunt work out of that process, and we'll try to talk about that before 1 o'clock. Primarily is a Windows-based program, does run successfully on Apple computers if you have a certain translator type device, which I guess is out in the market. It's not like it's a big expenditure. And Windows 8, we're running HAP on Windows 8, have had problems on touch screen and some tablet versions of Windows. Okay, but most all other operating systems were good to go. So that was just a very, very, very quick overview. I think what I'm going to do is just quickly the architecture. Very intuitive. That's why people like it. You put in your people, your lights, your walls, your roof, your glass, your floors, etc. Those are elements. They go into something you call an area of the building that you want to maybe run a load on and get a CFM to satisfy that load. That's called a space. Spaces have to be controlled by a thermostat. That's called a zone. You can have one space in a zone. You can have as many spaces as you want in a zone. You can have multi-space zones. But when you call something a space in HAP, you get an answer, both the load and the CFM to satisfy that load. So if I was running my office with one thermostat in my office, I'd call it a space, then I'd call it a zone. It'd be a single space zone. If I had a string of offices all along the north facade of the building, they were all similar, and I don't want to put a thermostat in each, but I want to know the airflow to go in each. For my run-out ductwork, I would call each a space and then put them under a common zone. That zone then goes under an air system. VAV, chill water, DX, constant volume. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of different air systems. The air systems, if they're water coils, hot and cold water coils in them, are served by remote plants like a chiller and or boiler. And then at the building level is when you do an operating cost. At the building level are all the plants, which come along for the ride, all the air systems, zones and spaces and schedules. You assign an electric and gas rate or oil or propane or whatever you happen to be using. And any miscellaneous energy consumers, elevators, escalators, parking garage, exhaust fans, snow melting equipment, pool heaters, anything that's not part of the air conditioning that consumes energy and costs dollars at the building level, and then you run an op cost at the building level. So that's the basic structure, okay? In a project, there'll never be a job big enough where you'll have to spill out into a second project. In other words, I could run the operating cost and load on my office, and that's a project. That's a project. Or I could do the whole floor, or the whole building, brick and mortar building, or a whole cluster of buildings in the Carrier campus here. I could go down to Cornell University and run the whole campus with electric drive centrifugal chiller or a turbine drive centrifugal chiller, the whole campus, and it's all one project with two scenarios, electric drive campus 1, turbine drive campus 2, highlight them both, run the app cost one against the other for the whole Cornell campus, 30, 60, 80, 100,000 tons, whatever. You'll never exceed one project with HAP. Can never be too small, and they'll never be too big. So everything gets put into a project. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is get into the program. I just did a very quick overview. I'm going to boot up the current version of HAP and talk about running loads and doing op costs. First, we're going to talk about running loads. When you boot up HAP, it displays any stored projects. You can also display projects that you've stored in older versions of HAP by saying show all projects. So if you had a network, you can have all the projects show from 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, whatever, going back even further into the 3s. Otherwise, it defaults to showing projects in the current version. If you want to start a new project, you just say new. You get a project level setting called the Preferences tab. This is for the whole job. This could be Tower 1 in Lower Manhattan, or it could be your office. It's a project. Which ventilation standard do you want to run your loads and do your op cost in? Here's all the ASHRAE standards using the ventilation rate procedure. You've got to know this. You might say, well, I want it for the city of Cincinnati. I don't see that here. Well, no doubt the city of Cincinnati is using one of two things. There is nothing else. Either their own special ventilation rate, typical only to them, at which point you would say user defined, and you would have to go know what it is. Or what everyone else on the planet uses, one of the versions of ASHRAE. Often people say, well, you should have the city of Cincinnati in there. And we could call them and say, yeah, we follow ASHRAE. So you're covered. I don't know of any instance in the years I've been in the group where one of these two choices isn't the right choice. Either your own or one of the versions that's currently available in ASHRAE. So we'll say ASHRAE 2010. If you're running loads, you're done with the preferences setting, because referencing a version of ASHRAE 19.1 to run loads has no meaning. In other words, if you said ASHRAE 19.1 2010 here for energy standard, when you run an op cost, if you are going to run operating costs, having run loads, then you can run a minimally compliant operating cost if you choose by pulling down whatever ASHRAE 90.1 you'd like. I think I'm right in saying everyone listening to this little Lunch and Learn today should only be specifying and using equipment that's ASHRAE 90.1 compliant, because we're all here in North America. You have old lead, current lead. Then you could deal in your operating cost in any currency on Earth. We'll just give you a couple of the big ones. But you could put in any currency and generate an operating cost. So that's the Preferences screen. On the General tab of the Preferences screen, you want to leave that checked. This makes HAP do loads and operating costs. If you uncheck it, it does loads only. But most everyone these days wants to do both. So we'll leave it checked. Say OK. So in HAP, there's always multiple ways of doing things. And in an hour that we have here, to show you detailed information and get into going through each tab on the space input form and discussing floors and roof and walls and glass and windows and frames and people and lights and plug. It's impossible, and I appeal to your sense of, we do loads in training. We're coming to Washington this year. Loads class is 7 professional development hours if you attend class, and it's 7 hours of just running loads. There's that much to know. And when you leave, you leave fully armed to run HAP on just about any job you want, and you go through all the reports and all that. And we do energy analysis, meaning operating costs for 7 hours. We do a lead class, baseline versus proposed EA Credit 1 for 7 hours, and then we have what's called an advanced users class. We're going to offer all those in Washington. In fact, if I boot up HAP and I go up to the word help, contact software support, there's our email address. Anything you want to know, just email that address. Could you call us? Yes. Would I suggest it? If you're hung up on talking to a person, but it will take longer, I guarantee you. Because like I was explaining before everyone joined us at about 5 to 1, odds are we have the answer to what you want to know. We have thousands and thousands of responses on just about everything. And it's sort of like it's probably already been asked, and we have it documented. You can email and say, hey, I'm not getting the same answer with my 62MZ ASHRAE spreadsheet for ventilation air as I get in HAP. What's going on? That's a pretty custom question. I wanted to ask someone. Now, we got that. We got everything already written down, we feel. And if you want us to review your project, if you're in Green Bay, which you guys aren't, and you get $12 a year for your boiler cost, you might say something's wrong. That's not something we can email you. So attached is my HAP archive. I'm getting $12 a year for heat in Green Bay. Can you look it over? And that's an email. And we'll grab your archive, read it into HAP, look it over. We sort of think we know what's happening already. I could already answer over the phone if we were speaking. You know what? Don't send me your email. Your archive, I know what's going on. I know why it's doing that. But emails work good. That's how you get to the support line. It's that simple. Right off the bat, if anyone listening in would like a free 3-month demo of HAP, email that software.systems. If anyone listening in has questions about HAP, further questions, email software.systems. If you don't have the latest version of HAP and you know you email software, it's that simple. We'll get back to you. There's 3-4 people involved in the process, and you won't be waiting a long time typically, unless it's some type of holiday, day before Christmas or something. You know, we have issues like that normally, where we have a skeleton crew. Okay, so embedded in HAP under the yellow question mark is probably the best health system I've ever seen in my 38 years with Carrier. For instance, anything you want to know in HAP, if I wanted to know what average ground reflectance has to do with running loads, I would put my cursor there and hit the F1 key. This is one way to use the help system. And it gives you a developed answer. It's that simple. You can also use the help system by just pulling down under contents. And you mentioned, what about an example problem? Are there any examples in HAP for new users? System design example problem. Design is running loads. So here's overview, gathering data, and I mean, this will self-instruct if you're willing to just pull down and look at the help system. Or you can go to and find things by index. If I type in ventilation, which is a big word, okay, all these things related to ventilation will come in. Calculations. And there's just tons and tons of documentation. All the mathematic algorithms and formulas are in there. Like you might say, how does it do DCV? I want to know. You could read what's in the help system, and most people are probably going to say, this is like way beyond what I needed to know, but it looks like you're doing a thorough job. I'm glad I read it. You know, you're not going to get a one-liner or something when you reference the help system. Or you can use the search tab and put in a word, and it'll search through and find all the topics. So the help system is excellent. Consider using it before emailing support, but you don't have to, and it's all behind this yellow question mark there. Under the word help, if you're on the internet, are all the websites that all lead to the same spot. I call it All Things HAP. All right? You could go in here to software. This was right through the HAP program. System design, that's HAP, the design program. And all these things, there are some other little software we have like Blockload, VSO. It's a quick version of HAP. Still 8760. It's sort of a wizard version. We have engineering economics analysis, a separate program, and then HAP. We have refrigerant piping design. System design loads is just HAP in loads only version. Then training on HAP, application and support. how to order it, downloads. If I went to downloads, it's going to take me to a website that shows me the current version of HAP is 4.8. I could right-click, save target as, and download the executable and install it, and I have HAP 4.8. Now, you have to have an authorization code that you're a HAP user to do that. Otherwise, would have the whole world go in and license HAP for free while we have a user base globally. And what is the license fee? $14.95 the first year. The first year. Every year thereafter that you keep it, when you renew, $2.95. And for renewals, you get all updates, all upgrades, any bug fixes, unlimited access to live support. I'm not trying to sound salesy-walesy, but for $2.95, the investment in the support alone is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You got 4 people, and these guys are all HAP experts. They're not young students right out of college that are learning HVAC at your expense or something. I think between the 4 of us, we had something like 138 years of experience with Carrier, so it's over 40 years a person just with Carrier in the industry. So we're not going to ask you something dumb like, well, what's a 4-pipe fan coil system or what's a VRF system? We're all well-versed in equipment, and we're there to answer your questions. All right, so just a little bit of look-see at the help system. HAP has wizards. One wizard, the weather wizard, will quickly and intuitively allow you to pull in the weather data. So if I was going to do the job in Chicago International Airport weather data, it's done already. It has weather data for the whole world, both for running loads and doing op costs. It's a double weather data set. ASHRAE loads, NOAA for running op costs. So it's already in there just by going up to the weather wizard, and there's the design loads, and there's the simulation weather data reflecting Chicago, TMY, meaning typical meteorological year. There's another wizard for putting in spaces quickly. There's another wizard for putting in all the plants, the buildings, and the air system quickly. There's another wizard for putting in utility rates quickly. Then if you want to do multiple systems quickly, one against the other, then you use the full wizard and you just keep putting in scenario after scenario. Let's try geothermal versus water source heat pump versus VRF versus VAV. And you do that by just going down through all these various buttons, hitting finish, and then you could go run an op cost. However, to learn HAP, you should traditionally probably do things, I'm going to say the traditional way, and that would be to create your first space by putting in the space input tabs, the general tab, defining the ventilation air by what type of space it is, if it's an office. There's the ASHRAE Part 1, Part 2. Part 1, CFM per person. Part 2, CFM square foot for VOC dilution for ventilation air. You have the area, the overall building weight, lights, mass lighting, plug loads, people activity, miscellaneous, sensible, and latent. Maybe it's a food store where you have a negative sensible and latent load because of the cold cases that are in the food store. Walls, windows, and doors, any type of exposure of your wall, any type of glass or doors on each of the walls or none of them. Roofs, with or without skies. Roofs can be flat at H, or they can have a slope to them if it's not a flat commercial roof. Inward leakage air and filtration. You could put it in terms of air changes an hour, or CFM of infiltration, or CFM a square foot of exterior wall area. Now this is graying out the CFM a square foot because in this space that we created, we didn't say there was any exterior walls, so that it knows there's none, and it knows there can be no infiltration through it. You can infiltrate just at night. You can infiltrate day and night. This is in addition, if you want, to ventilation, which is outdoor air introduction. Floors above spaces that are hot or cold. Odd grade, below grade. And if you went below grade and you wanted to read about it, I'd hit the F1 key. See that? And you get a nice picture of what's going on. And if you wanted to read more about the calculation, why am I scroll here? You could F1 any of those topics. And I'm trying to get this. I guess maybe that's the only thing on that page. I was thinking there was more. Get out of there and go into here maybe. But often there are hyperlinks in the help system that you can go through and calculate, see what the actual calculation is. I'm just trying to find one. Here's a typical one. Yeah, there you go. Now you're into the calculation through a hyperlink of how we do the calculation through a floor below grade. There's a heating loss. There's no coolant gain. Okay. So you would input all these tabs: general, internals, walls, windows, doors, roof, skylights, infiltration, floors, and partitions. And then that would become a space. You can then duplicate that space, and that space can make some nominal changes, and you'll have a second space. Duplicate that one, make some nominal changes, you have a third space, and then incorporate those spaces as what you want to run coolant and heating load. So you must input spaces. Spaces get air systems, and air systems can be anything out there. For instance, if it's a rooftop unit you want to run the load on, or maybe a vertical package or a split system, or something with chill water in it, or maybe it's a terminal unit type load or op cost you want. Terminal units are fan coils, geothermal, water source heat pump, chill beams, induction beams, VRF systems where there's a lot of little zones. So let's say you're doing a geothermal job and you're thinking of running a load and doing an op cost, and there's 55 units in the job. You don't want to put in 55 single zone constant volume water cooled units. You just say it's a terminal system, and you say that it's geothermal, and you put 55 in here now. You probably have a makeup air unit, and it goes through 55 spaces to become zones, but it lets you have different thermostat set points for each one, or the same. It lets you have different leaving air temperatures for each one, or the same. Different fan statics for each zone, or the same. And the bottom line is, it'll wrap it all up. You can input your actual capacity that you want to model if you're running op costs, or you could have what's called auto size throughout HAP, which become very popular. I don't know the size. You tell me the size I want to run an op cost, and I want to make that op cost minimally ASHRAE compliant. So auto size with minimal ASHRAE compliancy is very popular. You go ahead and run a quick operating cost that represents equipment that's within ASHRAE compliancy. Or you can put in something better than ASHRAE. Or you can put in the as-built compressor power if you're looking, let's say, at a submittal. We have various options to model the efficiency of the equipment. And when do you need the efficiency in a program like HAP? When you're going to do an op cost. So you would load in the air system, any plants that might be serving the air system, It'll handle any type of chiller that's out there in the industry. Okay? You can have centrifugals, screws, package screws, reciprocating, scrolls, all the different types of absorption chillers, single, double effect, direct fired absorption, double effect, chillers driven by an engine, water-cooled engine driven, air-cooled equipment, screw, reciprocating, or scroll. And you can assign or have us default to all the full and part loads representative of that type of equipment. So if you want to model some York chiller or something and you have the data on it, you can type it in here and it'll be that actual chiller if you have all these part load points. If you don't have much on the chiller, you don't know much about it, for instance, if it was a water-cooled centrifugal, HAP will just say, all right, I'll auto-size it, and I'll default to a representative full load kW per ton. And then I will generate part load data I think is representative of a starting chiller at 0.6 full load kW per ton. And I'll go ahead and run your operating costs with that data in it. So you get to know a lot about what you want to run an op cost on, or you get to know very little about it. It'll accommodate both situations. At the building level, and I'm just going to go open a project that has a building in it. At the building level is where everything comes along that you want to run an op cost on. Now, a building in HAP is a scenario. It's a bucket. If you had 5 brick and mortar buildings, 4 of them are baseline buildings, which is the way EA Credit 1 works, and 1 of them is the real proposed building. Highlight them all, right-click, and run them all, okay, and ask for the lead report. We'll ask for annual cost summary, and it'll go ahead and run them all against each other. So you could look at the fans, the cool. This is one of dozens of reports: heating, pumps, HVAC, non-HVAC, then in terms of dollars per square foot, then in terms of percent of total. So you could say, hey, this whole job is 36% of the total is lights, you know, and spend some time maybe on optimizing your lighting design or whatever. There's also a lead report that when you run EA Credit 1 lead analysis, it populates the complicated tables that we have copied with their permission from Green Building Certification Institute. That's the review body for lead. So the 0, the 90, the 180, and the 270 degree baseline rotation. They want you to rotate it 4 times, recalculate everything. For all these end-use items for both kilowatt hours and K, all that stuff's filled out for you. This is what they want you to do. We don't ask why, we just do it in HAP. And then this data can be put into their live Adobe forms. We even figure out at the bottom of the lead report how many points out of a possible 19 points currently in EA Credit 1 that you've earned. If this was a new job, you get 5 points for this job out of 19. If it was an existing building renovation, you'd have gotten 7 points out of 19. So there's functionality in the HAP program to do these lead requirements. One of them is, okay, one of the functionality is to duplicate the building and all of its spaces and HVAC equipment. And then after you make that duplicate into the first baseline, you can perform the 90, the 180, the 270 rotations. And remember, when you rotate the building, it's not symmetrical typically. You get different airflows. You get different loads. So the minimally compliant baseline EER and COP may be changing as the loads change. And this perfectly lends itself to computer. All that will be figured out for you. And it'll just populate the lead report with all the correct EERs and COPs and all. So HAP is used extensively. Now, running loads and doing op costs is sort of bread and butter. Lead has been the last 5 or so years. Basic HAP productivity enhancements. Let me just show you some things that people don't realize is in HAP. First things first, if I have a lot of spaces, these are all created by either the wizard or by the traditional way of doing it by hand, or there's a third way, importing GBXML. I'll show you that in a minute. But you have all these spaces. These are the building spaces now. And I could highlight them all. See, there's zillions of them here, or however many I care about. Right-click on them. Go into global replace mode. Type of data to replace. I want a different roof. Replace with that roof. And if I hit apply it here, which I'm doing, it puts a new roof on the whole bunch of spaces, however many there are. And now we've got a different roof on there. If we went in and looked under roofs, we got the roof that we asked for. Of course, it would have to be a space that has a roof on it. I'm going to think this one does. There you go, and it's got the new proposed building roof that we put in. So global changes allow you to play what-if scenarios, change out the walls, the roof, the glass, put in infiltration, take out infiltration, change the people, the lights, anything, and do a recalculation and for energy saving, energy conserving measures. Another feature in HAP that's paramount to know about, I'm going to open a new project, a clean sheet project, is to start each project by saying import HAP project data. This is how you should start every job in HAP. And what that means is I'm going to go to a project I've saved on my server or my workstation that is a template project for my firm. Let's pretend that it's this one. Okay. And now it says, all right, you've gone into your template project. What do you want to borrow that you put in the template to bring over to your actual job so you don't have to reinvent the wheel? You can go grab the weather data if you've customized it. Any spaces. Well, I'm doing a 7-Eleven store in Albany, having just finished one in Attica, and it's similar but not identical, but why reinvent the spaces completely? I'll just borrow these from the Attica job, dump them into my new project, and make cursory changes. Or you can import whole air systems. If you do, along come the spaces with it. Or whole plants. Or whole done buildings. Fractional schedules. By the way, all the ASHRAE fractional schedules are done for you. They're all done. You never have to do a fractional schedule unless you want to create your own custom schedule. Any wall construction, roofs, windows, anything, electric rates, and then when you import it, because you think you'll need it in this vacant project, it comes in like we're doing now. Look, we have nothing up here. So now we brought in all kinds of information. It's residing in our project. It would have taken us maybe hours to reproduce this from scratch. All the schedules are done, and here's a schedule. What is a schedule? It's a depiction each hour of the percent of 100% for that internal load when it's a fractional schedule. Here's people in a gymnasium. They come in at 7, 100% of them, and they go out at noon, and then only, actually that's the fan thermostat schedule. This is the occupied and the unoccupied time. Let me grab a fractional people schedule. And it depicts when the people come in, 7 a.m. a little bit, they're there all day, and they go out, this is for school, and they step on to 40%, and they're gone by 1,700 hours. Then you can make assignments, different profiles for different days of the week. So this is how the software knows how much cooling to supply for the internal load component of people in the classrooms. It's going to follow this profile during these months and these days of the week. Saturday, Sunday holiday, it's going to follow 5 or 3, which is almost vacant. So it knows there's no people in that classroom during Saturday, Sundays, and holidays. So all these schedules are done for you, and they're residing on the internet. If anyone listening in today is a HAP license holder and doesn't know about these fractional schedules, when you install HAP, okay, when you install HAP, we create for you in the Archives folder. I'm going to go into my computer, into the D drive where HAP is installed, under E20II, under Projects. That's where all your projects are put. Now, I have zillions of them. But there's going to be a project, if you only have a couple or a million, makes no difference, called Schedules. It's going to be installed there when you install HAP. And that project exists ready to go, and you can bring that project by importing it into HAP, okay, by retrieving it, I should say. And when you're done, you're going to have a project that you can save, show you here, that has all these done fractional schedules on them. So if I say project and open, here's one called Fractional Schedules, and when I open it, in there are all these schedules: assembly, health, hotel, light manufacturing, office, elevators, parking garages, restaurants, retail, schools, warehouses, everything. And all these fractional schedules are done. So you don't have to be reinventing the wheel doing these things. Like here's office occupancy. Now, who's done these? ASHRAE. Well, how do I know they're any good? Well, if you've got something better, you can always use it. Create your own from scratch, modify these, or go with ASHRAE schedules. I mean, for most people's money, office like service hot water, I have no idea, but ASHRAE research does apparently, what the service hot water schedule is for an office building. Looks like it ramps up in the middle of the day and ramps back down, and at 4 p.m. people are using it and then they're going home. So you always can use these or make modifications of them. When you get to the building level in a project, when you get to the building level, you can go ahead and actually run an operating cost. And that building could be the building for a lead job, or it could be multiple versions of the same building, like this one is, with 4 different HVAC systems on it. Same building, same lights, walls, people, glass. I'm just going to run it with 4 different HVAC systems that I configured, and I'll get 4 different answers, and I can go through here and find what appears to be the lowest operating cost. It looks like it's this one. And look and see what, I lower fan dollars, little higher in pumps. This is a water-cooled plant, so it has heat rejection. The others are air-cooled, so there's no heat rejection dollars. And the lights, electric equipment, miscellaneous electric, miscellaneous fuel, like maybe elevators, escalators, swimming pool heaters, surface water heaters. That's all in the non-HVAC side of the reports. So that's where you would run an operating cost in HAP at the building level. And again, a building could be a building, or it could be a room, or it could be the whole Cornell campus. It's a bucket. It's a design scenario that you want to compare one versus the other. So HAP is able to load in weather data quickly. It comes built in. Spaces by one of 3 methods: manual, or the building wizard. Or you can, I'm just going to open a new project here, a clean sheet project. I'll just say project and new, I should have said. There's a new project with nothing in it. You can also bring in a building if you have Revit or Bentley type software and you create what's called a GBXML file. GBXML is a transport file that brings in 3D, the CAD drawings of all the floor plans and spaces. So here's a little GBXML file with 15 spaces. Could be a 15 or 5 or 150, whatever you happen to put in the GBXML file. And now I've got 15 spaces in there. This might take me a couple hours to do manually or however long. So you got multiple ways in HAP to put the spaces in. You also have multiple ways to put the systems in. You can use the equipment wizard. If I wanted a rooftop on every one of these 15 spaces, individual, that would be 15 rooftop units. I would say, all right, I'm just going to use the wizard, drag and drop them all in, say okay. Now remember, I had no air systems in this project 30 seconds ago. I'm going to say they're electric or gas heat rooftops, single zone constant volume, one per zone, it's an office, and finish. Now at the air system level, I've got 15 air systems all ready to, I could run the loads now, shift, click, highlight, print your design results, and run 15 loads on 15 different rooftops. Get the answers. And we'll go ahead and do that. So the wizards are a streamlined way of doing the basic HAP functionality. Now, we crammed a lot in. Why don't I leave 5 minutes or so for any questions that may exist, keeping in mind that we sort of tried to do in 1 hour or so what really it takes us 21 hours, 3 7-day sessions to go through when we do our actual HAP training. Any questions out there, that basic or advanced type questions that I could help you with HAP? We know how to enter the help system, to send an email. We know where the HAP websites are. You can go right up in the word help, and when you're connected to the internet, go to any one of these and go to design, and you have training. If I went in here to software website, I wanted to see what training is going to be so far in 2014 that might exist. Just do what I did before. Go to software, system design, that's HAP. Go to training. Right through the HAP program. And there's the scheduled training so far for next year, even though it's only December of this year. Here's Washington. Looks like it's going to be June 17, 18, 19, 20 at our carrier sales office in Washington. Haven't scheduled Chicago yet, but this is a relatively new schedule. Okay. Was this helpful? The consensus here, Bob, is yes. Okay. I'll just hold the line, for a while. If there are no questions, in a couple minutes, I'll sign off. It's getting close to 1. I know I want us to adhere to our schedule, especially at lunchtime. And if there are any questions, I'll take them now. Otherwise, if none, thank you very much for giving us this time. And if you're interested and don't have HAP currently, just email software.systems@carrier.utc.com. And we'll fix you up with a free update. Demo, I should say. Here's the email address. Anyone have any specific questions? If not, then I guess I'm going to close out the meeting. And again, thank you all very much.
Bob, we're good here in D.C., but thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll do something additional again.